guys, today we're going to smoke some ribs in a Kettle charcoal grill, and I'm going to focus on a simple and easy method to smoke ribs. I'm going to be using a BBQ Dragon grill stone to make the temperature control really easy, and these aren't competition ribs. These are just going to be some delicious smoked ribs that you have for your family on a weekend. I'm going to be using baby back ribs today because they're a little bit easier to trim. The meat is small, the bones are small, and it's a nice easy way to get started with smoked ribs. You can get them right from the grocery store, and you're probably going to be able to get a pretty decent baby back rib. So I got 2 racks of baby back ribs here. Nice looking ribs. We're going to trim them down. We're going to remove the membrane. Even when you're doing a simple and easy smoke, you got to remove the membrane. That's the most important thing of the rib prep. A nice way to do this is actually use a butter knife, something that's not too sharp. Get it up underneath that membrane like this, and then when you're actually able to grab that membrane, you can start pulling it right off the whole thing. There we go. Now that whole membrane's coming off very nice. The membrane not only makes the baby back rib tougher when you're actually eating it, but it creates a layer through which the smoke does not go into your ribs. And the whole idea is getting plenty of smoke right into the meat. The smoke won't enter the fat too much, and it certainly won't go through the membrane. So next, I'm going to cut these each in half, so I end up with 2 half racks of ribs. You're cutting right between the bones there, equal sizes. I'm also going to do a little bit of trimming here, just so that I have the thin pieces of meat off that are going to burn. So we have a nice square rib there for cooking. I have no problem with using a store-bought rub because obviously there's some great store-bought rubs. I'm using some Suckle Busters today. I've got 2 versions of a Suckle Busters. One is their competition barbecue rub. The other one is what they call their Hog Waller. The main difference here is the Hog Waller is a lot sweeter. So I'm actually going to do 2 with the sweet one and then 2 with the competition, just so we can try them afterward and see how they are. Now, when you're adding your rub to the ribs tend to be pretty thin, so you don't want to you want to put it on evenly by sprinkling it on there. So even if you've made your own rub, definitely get it into a jar that you can sprinkle with so that you can put it on pretty easily. Now, the secret about a rub, which you don't want to forget, everybody doesn't do this, but I like to use a binder. Yeah, so the mustard is not to add flavor. Actually, mustard works because it really, if there's any flavor added, it's a little bit bright, a little bit acid. But the mustard is only to use as a binder. You just rub it very thinly into the meat, and it's so that when we put that rub on, the rub is going to actually stick a little bit right from the beginning. Now the secret of a rub is you don't really rub it. If you rub it, it's going to cake and it's actually going to rub off. So you're patting it. You're just putting a little bit on, you're patting it in. Go ahead and use a fair amount of rub, it'll absorb. This Suckle Busters is not too salty. Some of the store-bought ribs can be a little bit salty. All right, so I've got my baby back ribs prepped. We've got a nice rub patted into it, both sides, and these are looking great. So I'm gonna actually leave them to rest for half an hour to an hour, and in the meantime, let's go ahead and go start the grill, or in this case, the smoker. One of the secrets to controlling the temperature in a kettle grill when you're smoking is don't start with too much charcoal. Too much charcoal at the beginning is a nightmare to keep the temperature low enough. I'm going to use about a half a chimney, maybe a touch more, so not too much right from the start there. And I got a chimney of insanity here, so in about 3 minutes this charcoal's going to be ready, and we will dump it in. So get this lid up, and here we go. The secret to getting a chimney of insanity lit in about 2 minutes is as soon as you light it, aim that fan right in there and turn it up full speed. It sounds like a jet airplane taking off, and it's shooting a bunch of heat and spark through there. So it's about 2 minutes later. The charcoal's ready to go on the chimney. I'm just using regular old lump charcoal here. Makes it really easy to add it, control the temperature, doesn't get too hot. Now that's about all I need for the start of this smoke. Next thing I'm gonna do, right on the top of it, I'm gonna add, I think probably just one chunk for right now of that wood. And that's all I need to get going here. Now I'm gonna go ahead and insert the BBQ Dragon grilling and smoking stone. That's really the key here to being able to smoke on the Weber charcoal kettle. So here we go, or any charcoal kettle that's 22 inch. This is what the stone looks like before you use it. Nice and clean. I just wanted to show you that because the one that I've been using for a long time has some miles on it and it looks great. So this thing just fits right in like this. It sits right in there, right on the top of that charcoal. And then I'm gonna go ahead, throw in the grate, just like that. And we're ready to go. Now, I'm using a spin grate on top of it. Allows me to make little adjustments to where my meat is, and at the same time I can move that charcoal door right over the charcoal opening in the stone so that I can add more charcoal and more wood chunks as I go along. So we're ready to add the ribs. Let's go. The ribs are going to be placed right over the stone area here in the smoker, in the kettle grill. Plenty of real estate available on top of that stone. The stone is separating the ribs from the actual charcoal, so there's no direct heat. You have indirect heat cooking, but look at all the smoke coming out of here already. The one last key that we need here, which is vital, is you got to have a thermometer testing the interior temperature of the grill. Now, in some cooks with bigger pieces of meat, you'll use the thermometer also stuck into the meat because the internal temperature of the meat's important. We're going to cook these ribs based on how they feel, how soft they get, how tender the meat is, not try to stick a probe into the rib itself. Okay, I'm using a BBQ Dragon 6 probe thermometer. It allows me to use 6 different probes. For this smoke, I'm only going to be using one probe, and that's going to be the interior temperature. I like to mount it like right through a little lime or a small fruit, and that actually holds it up off the area of the grill. And we'll put it sort of in a centered place so we know we're getting a good reading on what the actual temperature is in there. And now we're going to put it on the top. So I like to put the vent over the meat so that we know that there's lots of circulation going right there. And I'm going to start with that top vent wide open. Now, controlling the temperature of the grill does not have to be complicated, and here's the simple thing to know. The bottom vent should be open all the time, and you're going to start control the temperature by adjusting the top vent. You're going to dial the top vent down more closed when it gets too hot, and that's going to make it cool. If it gets too cool, you're going to open up that top vent. If there's ever a time when you've perhaps added too much charcoal and now you can't, by closing the top vent, get it cool enough, then you can start fussing with the bottom vent. But with this small amount of charcoal, I think we're going to be fine just looking at that top vent. So let's go ahead and turn on the thermometer right now, and we will see where we are for temperature. All right, so it's just coming up, 117. Let's check back in about 5 minutes and see where the interior temperature of that grill is. Okay, so right now my thermometer says that it's 250 degrees. That's about 25 degrees higher than I'd like to see it. The vents are at full open right now, so I'm actually going to crank them completely closed for a few minutes till I get that temperature to drop back down closer to maybe 230 or so. It's going to coast a little bit. When I'm closing the vent here, I'm preventing oxygen from flowing through the charcoal as easily, so the charcoal doesn't burn as hot. All right, we came down to 230 degrees with the vent on the top completely closed. Now, I'm gonna just nip that top vent open a little bit, get a little bit of air coming out of it. And I wanted to grab it before it dropped all the way to 225 because in my experience, it's got a little momentum. So as the heat's dropping, it'll continue to drop for a bit after you adjust your vent. Those ribs have been cooking for about 2.5 hours so far, and I have just noticed that the temperature has dropped to 217 degrees. Oops, that is a couple degrees past what I was hoping I wouldn't get it past. So let's go fix that. I'm just gonna budge open those vents a bit. Not too much at first, just to give it a little bit extra oxygen and see if we can get that thing to move up closer to 225. Not a big disaster, and we'll see how it goes. Oh, it's already jumped up to 219. So it looks like that's gonna work out. Okay, now look at this. I'm gonna turn these ribs over. Look how just the tips of the bones, of course, are turning a little bit black, but the meat is exactly the same color as the tops of the other ribs. So every half of rack of ribs is no more cooked on the bottom than it is in the top. And I didn't turn these ribs one time during a 5-hour cook. 5 hours, no turning at all, and they're completely even, top and bottom, front and back. The front rib closest to the fire opening is the same cooking as here. The grill stone is so perfectly controlling the heat and distributing that heat around the grate. So let's go ahead and put these on a plate and see how they are. A good rib wants to come off the bone cleanly, but it doesn't want to be flaking and falling off the bone. The meat has to have retained a little bit of texture to it, a little bit of firmness, while remaining buttery and cakey. Oh yeah, look at that. Just goes right through. That's beautiful. Let's look for our smoke ring there. Nice. Yeah. There we go. Look how much meat is on those ribs too. And look at the juices coming right out of them. That rib is tender. Very nice. Just find a place right there between the ribs. Okay. Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah, look at the bark on these. Such a perfect dark mahogany. You can see the red smoke ring. See the red smoke ring right around the edge of those ribs in there? Beautiful. That's good. The bark is perfect. It's like biting through hickory spice. Yeah. And the meat pulls right off the bone. Just like that. Beautiful. So this simple and easy recipe I've done as a strictly dry rib only recipe. But you can easily transform this into a wet rub recipe by the application of a little barbecue sauce here at the end, just right over the dry rub that we have. And that's what I'm going to be doing. Now, a very light application of the barbecue sauce is going to be enough to really bring some moist tanginess to the outside of this. It's a slightly different style of rib, but it works very well either way. Now, you could also add this at a brushing or a layer of the barbecue sauce about half an hour or 45 minutes before the cook is over, and then it dries, and you can add more afterwards then again. Now, when you're doing your brush, you want to make sure that you brush it on both sides. Again, I'm doing a very thin rub, and after you let this sit for a little while, it'll actually absorb into the bark that we've already prepared on the ribs, and then it gets a little bit drier. But this will definitely add a little bit of sweetness, a little bit of zestiness. This is a barbecue sauce that has a lot of vinegar mixed into it, so it's a very zesty item. So that's how that one looks. Look at the smoke ring in these ribs. That is a beautiful smoke ring. Just a nice red ring all the way around it. So let's try the wet rub. That's great. Boy, the extra zest of the vinegar in that sauce combines very well with the smoke flavor of these ribs. I'd say in this case, I like the ribs with the wet sauce. Delicious.